All right, everybody, welcome to Full Circle with Joyce once again. And right now we're getting ready for our viewpoint discussion and a look at current affairs and some of the biggest trending topics in our country today. And before we jump into all of that, let me introduce my guests. With me, I have Justin Omoyo, who's the director at Soma Education Services. Very passionate about youth and education, and also Ekran Dungu from the German Institute. She's also in the board of KEPSA, which is the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, the education board.
Yes.
Yeah, and GCI Education Board as well. Karibuni sana to the show.
Thank you.
All right, lady and gent. Before we jump into learning poverty and our topic for the day, let me again read this story about Safaricom, because as many of you have heard by now, Safaricom has now appointed a Kenyan to that top seat. This, I believe, is the first Kenyan to steer that seat. And so Peter Ndegwa's appointment ends months of a push and pull between the telco's major owners, which is government and Vodacom. So let's just say this guy has been grilled for this job. Let me see. His appointment will, of course, he will take up this position effective April 1st, 2020. He has been picked from Diageo, the UK headquartered giant of alcoholic beverages, where he was the managing director for continental Europe, overseeing Diageo's operations in 50 countries in Western and Eastern Europe, Russia, Middle East, and North Africa. He previously worked with East African Breweries Limited and is credited with being a key member of the team that came up with the low-end beer, Senator Keg, one of the brewer's best performing brands. He's a graduate of University of Nairobi with economics and also holds an MBA from the London Business School. And what do you guys think about this appointment? Of course, it's also coming in the wake of Safaricom, I guess in many ways sort of rebranding itself or representing itself in a different way to Kenyans. Lots of questions about transparency. We've been seeing how their competitor has raised so many questions about, their transparency with certain things like data and the cost of their services. And so they're positioning themselves as a new Safaricom for Kenyans. And I'm curious what you guys think about that now that we also have a Kenyan stepping into that role.
Ladies first.
Ladies first, okay.
To me, it's a plus for our youth and a motivator, because Ndegwa is a product of Griffin, and we cannot mention quality education without remembering Griffin, the former Starehe Boys Center guy. So I think our youth will be more motivated that I can stand in Kenya and also become a CEO of the leading country in Africa. It's a positive thing for me and for our youth who are in school today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Justin?
I can't really agree anymore. So I feel that they picked an individual who has had an impeccable career. He's been successful in all that he has done. He's a man of integrity. Going through his profile, he has achieved quite a lot for himself. He has an experience in various markets. So he comes on board with a rich experience for this market.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a lot for him to do because, while Safaricom remains the largest telco in the country, in the past it's seen a lot of its share of the market actually decline in some areas. According to recent data from the Communications Authority of Kenya, the firm's share of the market is actually at its lowest point in several years, at 63.5% this year, which is still humongous, but that's its lowest point. And other, networks like Airtel have been able to grow their subscriber base. And so I think there's a lot of work for him to do too. And it will be interesting to see what lessons he's able to adapt from his previous experience in the beverage industry and now apply that to telco. But best wishes to him. Yes. And it certainly sounds like Kenyans have a good vibe about this and are very excited to see a Kenyan man there. Yes. So no pressure, because they had to maintain it for so long. So now no pressure to him. Yes. But we certainly do wish him well. All right, with that said, let's jump into our main story for today. But actually, hold on, before I do that, remember actually in our newspaper review, I talked about how schools are killing candidates' career decisions, that thing about head teachers omitting to submit students' desired options. I want to read about that just because also these guys are in education, and I'm sure you people would have a lot to say about that. But these is again shocking details of how teachers are killing students' career dreams. In the past 3 years, principals have failed to send applications of some 1.6 million KCSE candidates to universities. Just days to this year's KCSE examination, details have emerged of how these school heads have been killing the dreams of candidates. They do not send their applications to the Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service. It is a mandatory requirement for all candidates sitting KCSE to apply to KUCPS for courses which they wish to study in university. However, some high school heads have deliberately failed to make university and tertiary college applications for candidates, undermining their prospects to pursue their dream careers. Now, before we even find out why they're doing, I mean, how do you explain that? It is a requirement for students to have done that for them to get into university. This is an obligation on the part of the head teachers, and yet this is saying that they have deliberately failed. Are our teachers, the people that we are putting our hopes and trusts in, deliberately sabotaging us now? Justin?
It's a very sad situation if that's happening, because then the steps that are followed is you pick a course that you anticipate to pursue, but if someone is sabotaging you, I really don't know what options then the students have soon after they graduate and have their grades and ready to join college.
Right.
So that's a sad situation. If there is, then the authorities have to look into it.
And let me just throw out some more data as I get Ekra ready to comment on this. But it has been established by the Standard that some high school teachers do not make the applications to universities and tertiary colleges, citing the anticipated poor academic performance of their institutions in national examinations. Basically, they don't have any faith in their students to do well. And so they're saying, you guys are not going to do well anyways, so we're not going to apply for you. In some schools, principals select and register only the top performers likely to score the minimum university entry grade of C+ and above, ignoring the rest they deem to be poor performance. Data seen by the Standard also reveals that for the past 3 years, high school principals failed to send applications for some 1.6 million children who sat KCSE. Last year, although 664,592 candidates sat the examinations, only a fraction, exactly 85,769 of applications were received out of almost 665,000.
Wow.
Ekra, what's your response to this data?
That data is shocking if it's a true reflection of what is happening on the ground. And I don't know whether we have a law that enforces the head teachers to register the students. So maybe I may need to investigate that so that we can also act on it from our board if such a law is not there.
Right.
Because we usually hold a round table with Parliament and also the Senate. I think our teachers, they also need some training. They are killing the dreams. Even before we talk about the university placements, Joyce, remember, there was this student who drew a very funny cartoon. Mm-hmm. And then it was all over that the head teacher has dismissed the student that is a devil worshipper, instead of noticing this is a talent in drawing. So the same thing, you cannot assume that this one will get a D. So we are not going to register you for your choice. You never know, miracles do happen. And we have already been concentrating too much on the student that is scoring A's. Actually, A has been our disease, the A disease. So even the principals, they are pushing everybody and they are mistreating every child, and the kids are living without self-confidence just because the head teacher said that you will become useless, there's no need of registering you. I think we need to name and shame these, and we also need to know which schools are these, which principals are these, to an extent of some of them. This is a case that I dealt with a month ago when the Form 3s were registering for their Form 4s. Unfortunately, a child in a particular high school was pregnant, and the head teacher refused to register her for the exam because she's pregnant. So
I
how
just had
many
a guest here
others?
yesterday who gave birth in the midst of her KCSE exam, so at least she was able to sit for her exam.
Yes, and the exam is 1.5 years away because it was
Yeah.
September. So if she gives birth in January, then the baby will be big enough. She will go back and sit for her exam. And what if that parent was not able to access me because I called the principal, we had a conversation, and the following day she was registered for exam. So I think we also need a lot of awareness to these teachers. They need to know that they don't own the students. They are there to facilitate the learning.
Right.
Yes.
Man, that's very frustrating, because this is saying that this application portal is open to everybody, but a majority of candidates will never, have access to any of those facilities, right? And so not TVET programs, not degree programs, not university programs. It's such a shame. And actually, looking at some of the data, this is by summary of school applications by county. Let me just show you or read for you a few things here. Let me point out, say, Isiolo, right? In 2017, they had a total of 1,259 candidates. Only 24 were applied for. That's 1.91%. In 2018, they had an increase of candidates to 1,364, and then they reduced the number of applicants to only 4, which is actually 0.29%, like we're at zero of applicants actually being signed up for this. In Mandera, and we're seeing, okay, Mandera and Marsabit, the data also is quite sparse, but they had 3,409 candidates in 2017. No applications were made in 2017. They had an increase again of candidates to 3,671 in 2018. Again, no candidates applied for or registered for these. And so with some of these, you're actually seeing that the trend is worsening as we go through the years. And I don't know, at some point we have to just have that anger, really, as Kenyans, that these sort of things are happening. Let me try and find Nairobi and see how that fares. Here we go. So Nairobi had 27,085. Out of that, only 5,675 were registered, which is shocking, because you also think about how many Kenyans flock to the capital city in search of opportunities, in search for higher learning in these institutions that we have. Again, same last year, 27,000 plus registered, but only 6,000. So a marginal increase of 1.64% as far as the number that was actually registered. But certainly these are very, very shocking statistics. In Mombasa, approximately 8,400 in 2017. I think they registered 1,000 and something, similar number, and they've also registered 1,700 or so last year. So clearly there's a problem across counties. There's nobody here actually who has 100%. In fact, the highest percentage we're seeing of total number of people who have been registered is 22.56%, and that's from Kiambu. But that's less than a quarter.
Wow.
That's the highest.
It's shocking.
And so you
statistics.
wonder, what sort of opportunities are people supposed to have if you can't even get the chance to go to university? You can't even get the chance to go to college because someone somewhere has sat down and decided, I don't think you're good enough. I don't think you're going to perform well enough. And so I'm not going to apply for you. I mean, it's very frustrating. Very frustrating. Do you have any final comments on that?
Yeah.
I'm clearly very upset.
I think on those shocking statistics, maybe from where I'm sitting, I'm thinking we need to investigate our law,
Absolutely.
our Education Act, and see what reviews need to be done. Perhaps the principals are not committing any illegality. There might be no law that bids them to do that.
But doesn't it say that they're supposed to?
Yes. So if it is not there, we need to enforce.
Yeah.
So there needs to come up a policy that it is a must. It's mandatory.
Yeah.
For the principal to do this, it's mandatory for the parent to follow up. Because basically at the end of the day, the government is doing a lot of investments in the education sector. Then if we don't have people transitioning to this, then there will be other ghost projects. and the principals are there to assist in this.
All right. Well, as we get ready for our main discussion here today, it sounds like some of the school heads are that were spoken to concerning this say that they have lost hope because of poor annual performance of their candidates. And indeed, we're seeing that an analysis of KCSE performance between 2014 and 2016 reveals a trend of poor grades, with more candidates posting D's and E's. And so then we do have to ask that question, is there a crisis in education here in Kenya? And that's going to be the focus of our discussion coming up next after this break. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to Full Circle with Joyce. We were here, I'm here with my guests rather, Ekra and Justin, as we're talking about the education system in Kenya. And just before we went on break, I was pointing out some research here by the Standard, talking about how in some quarters actually teachers, it seems, are sabotaging their own students from getting to university. That an entire county last year did not nominate a single student to go to a tertiary institution or to university because they anticipate that there would not be good grades. That said, there is a question though about the quality of education in Kenya and whether we are doing justice to our students, doing enough for our students. In fact, the same article pointed out that between 2014 and 2016, there has been an increase actually in more students posting D's and E's in their final examinations. Now, I want to point you to another article, which is by the World Bank, and this has been cited in the Daily Nation, saying children going through the Kenyan education system, that the World Bank is warning of a crisis in Kenya's education system, with children going through our system losing an estimated 3 years of learning. Let me explain this. This is Huma Wahid, is their senior education specialist, and is quoted as saying, what this means is that a Kenyan child can expect to go to school for 11 years, out of which they will only do 8 years worthwhile of learning. In other words, going to school for those 11 years doesn't mean that children are learning. And this is mainly because of the quality of education, that we're actually losing 3 years. Shocking statistics. And this is not, this is from the World Bank, who we presume would have the right sort of tools and instruments to conduct a study to this scale. Justin, as someone who's very passionate about youth and education, what immediately comes to your mind when you hear a statement like that?
That's actually a clear reflection of what goes on, and it's been an ongoing problem, I think. I don't know if the government has noticed that, or relevant authorities. At schools, mostly what happens is education, which is exchange and receiving of information. And then that is within a structured environment, which we call a school. But when you look at learning, as World Bank puts it, it's something that goes on. It doesn't have to be within a school. It goes on all the time, everywhere. And this is what sharpens ascribed attributes of an individual. This is what unlocks their potentials and competencies and then enhances them as they go on. I'm glad the government has made steps to pick up the CBC, which is competence-based curricula, which then will be able to unlock and enhance the competencies of the children. But what I'll say is, we have teachers at school. Some of them ended up in teaching because it was the only option available. So they are not teachers at heart, meaning they don't have the ability, the skills, the competencies to be able to facilitate, not really just teach, but facilitate and help the students to be able to get the best out of that which they're competent in, such that you find a child was maybe supposed to be an engineer, but he is being faced by a teacher who doesn't even know how to identify that in this particular child. The other problem we have is, in Kenya, look at public schools. You would have 100 students being taught by one teacher. For you to be able to roll out properly something that is competence-based, you need almost a one-on-one approach, a very high ratio. Private schools try to have 1 to about 15, but look at 1 to 90. How will you then be able to pick on every individual and help them to unlock their potentials?
Let me jump to extra with this. So now we have this new education system. It's called the competence-based curriculum, right? And in reference to what Justin here is talking about, how does the competence-based curriculum address some of these issues in our Kenyan public schools, including the ratio of students to teachers, if it does at all?
Okay, if it does at all. I like that. We go back to your mention. We have so many D's and E's that we've been producing the last few years. These are people who are tested for what they are not passionate about. It doesn't mean that these people are dumb. It's only that whatever they were tested for memory, and that's not their thing. Maybe they're very good with what they can do with their hands. So the competency-based curriculum is coming to address that. Fortunately, it's a good thing and a plus for our country. Unfortunately, we didn't even prepare our teachers for that. We didn't even train them. A one-day training is not enough for someone who was used to the 6th century system. What I mean by the 6th century system, when we went to school, you and I and you, we knew that the teacher is the brightest in the room. So stand there in front of all of us, talk, go. This CBC is supposed to be more interactive. How are you going to interact with 100 pupils in class?
So there's no addresses as far as the size of those classrooms.
Not only the size, the materials. It's an expensive venture. My kids are in school. I know every day you have a list of things you're supposed to buy. The child that is going to a public school, the parents know that this is free primary education for all.
Yeah.
So they know they're not supposed to buy anything. They're not supposed to buy Manila papers. The school is supposed to provide. Has the government investigated and see that they can really afford to provide these materials for the pupils?
So that it's entirely free.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that it is entirely free. It is so interactive, including to the parents.
Well, Ekra, let me ask you this, because you've said that this curriculum-based, competency-based curriculum, the teachers were not trained in it, they were not prepared for it, or maybe the training was a day, or very brief, basically.
Yeah.
Why the rush? Why did we have to rush into that?
The challenge that we have, the moment we start politicizing education, that is where we fail. Education politics. Because remember, it's education politics that led us to 844 system. When we had a system that was able to remove the wheat and the chaff at an early age, the 7-4 system that our parents did. So by that time, somebody would have identified this is what I want to do, and they pursue it. That's why we are trying to go back. Unfortunately, we are doing it with a rush. Right now, as we speak, Joyce, we've stopped the intake for teachers. Teacher colleges are not doing any intakes because they have realized we need to update the teaching curriculum. So the best solution, the people that round table decided, let us not do an intake.
Yeah.
So we're going to have super crisis.
Yes.
But this should make us all so upset, because the fact that someone is in school for 11 years and you're only getting education worth 8 years, 3 years of a young adult's life is being wasted, yet they wake up every morning at 4 a.m. to be on a bus at 6
to go and
to
try
go
to
to
remember.
school and then come back at 7 and sleep late doing homework, and it's not paying off. There needs to be a point at which us Kenyans really get upset about some of these things. And so even when we're talking about competency, this report is citing this. As far as secondary school education is concerned, despite completion of secondary education, more than 40% of 19 and 20-year-olds score below the basic literacy level. Basic literacy level. And it's saying, this senior researcher then said, due to this, she added, children who have gone through the education system in Kenya can only reach 52% of their potential. Justin.
Yeah, exactly what we're talking about. Potential is not just picking information, cramming it, remembering it, getting you grades. We need to look at a solution where we have an education system that looks into basically a learning system which looks into providing solutions, not providing answers to what you've crammed, that you're just memorizing to report what you found out. For this to happen, then the stakeholders, who are the families, the parents, the schools, and the government, have to come on board and roll this system out by bringing everybody on board. For example, what is happening now, we have about 4 years in campus of teachers who are being trained or being taught. We have about 3 in tertiary institutions, maybe the colleges. These are the people who are going to teach the class 1 to 3 who are going through the competence-based curricula. These guys are not being trained in line to that particular curricula.
Yeah.
We will have a crisis.
Ekra.
Because they are doing things the old way. They don't know what is the new way of doing things.
Yeah.
So the CBC, the spirit of it is a very good one, but the implementation is a bit problematic.
52% of our students, only 52% are reaching their potential. And those are the ones who've gone through 11 years of study. Where do we go from here? And are you confident in this new curriculum beginning to address
the new
this?
curriculum is a good thing, and it's a good thing for this country. And one of the things, it will be able to address the future of work, because we need not to start studying things that we don't need. Me and you, we did the parts of a grasshopper, we did the life cycle of a frog. I'm not sure you've used that again.
No.
So the 844 system was a disservice to all of us.
Yeah.
Those who really camp is a German word. Those who really worked hard by themselves are the ones who are able to get where they're supposed to go. CBC is also parental involving.
Yes.
A lot of parents have left their kids
Sure.
alone.
Sure.
So this CBC requires you as a parent to do homework with your child. So that is also something else that they also didn't prepare the parents. I've had a lot of parents complaining that they went to school during their time, they don't need to be involved in this. So we also didn't develop a curriculum for the teachers. And this is what government realized. That's why they have stopped the intake for teachers. I think it's for 1 year or so. So that means there'll be a gap. Already we have a shortage of teachers. Whoever makes decisions, I don't know how they make their decisions.
Yeah.
We already have a shortage of teachers. Then you say we are going to stop the intake for teachers. Some of my members who run private colleges, I'm also Secretary General for our association for private colleges. They have definitely laid off because you don't have an intake. Then you don't need like 70 staff. So those are job losses. So the person who is making decisions from a boardroom without checking what is happening on the ground. Why are we doing what we are doing?
Okay.
Those are questions.
Yeah. Certainly good questions you're raising. And I think we continue to ponder on them, but my time is fleeting. And so I want to ask a question that I think, Justin, you raised, which is about, and it's something I've always believed as well, from economic studies, that great education really begins with great teachers.
Yes.
And in many ways, it feels like in Kenya, like you're saying, this is just, it's an option. It's a job, just take it. There's not that passion, there's not that deliberate action to fully engage in this. And here we are also now hearing those very same teachers also losing jobs because of poor intake. And so my question is, do we pay enough attention to the qualities of these teachers, the certifications of these teachers, their characteristics? Because actually the bank did a survey in 7 sub-Saharan countries and found that on average 3 in 10 of 4th grade teachers had not mastered the language of the curriculum that they were teaching.
Because that's not their passion. Most of them.
They're not passionate about
They're not
what
passionate
they're doing.
about it. They've come from a system that has a problem. They've only had that choice of being a teacher because you got a certain grade. And the system has bundled all A's to go to engineering school and medical school. Probably you might have had good teachers in that group of people who went there.
Yeah.
The system is not training the teachers to be able to teach children competently in a way that you're able to have a child and help the child, model the child, unlock the child to reach their full potentials. They're just giving you information which you take in like a sponge and produce it during exams and get your grades.
Ekra, your final comments.
I go around high schools and during mentorship and I ask people, what would you like to become? 80%, even the ones who are getting a D, they will tell you engineer and they will tell you pilot. Hardly do you hear anyone telling you they want to become a teacher. There is a need to make the profession attractive.
Absolutely. I'd absolutely
That's
agree
the
with
need that needs to be there
Yeah.
for our future and for the future of our children.
Absolutely. And just to put all of our discussion in perspective, is yesterday I was talking to someone and we were reflecting on how our Form 3s right now are going to be the bulk of voters in 2022.
Yes.
And so we need to be thinking about what it is that they're learning, the sort of values that are being instilled in them, the sort of principles that they are adopting, because literally, politically, our education system is so linked to where this country is going to go and the sort of citizens that we're producing out of it. Ekra and Justin, thank you so much for being a part of this show.
Thank you.
This has been a very heavy discussion for me. Man, I have a lot of sentiments about this, but asanteni sana for your feedback and your comments. I do see a few of you have SMS'd in. I have to go on break, but I'm going to read them when we come back shortly, even as we prepare for our second hour of Full Circle with Joyce.